For as long as I can remember, I've been somebody who put other people's needs above my own, and I feel like it's only ever held me back in life. It's not like I see having high empathy as a bad thing necessarily, but you certainly get to a point where it's no longer a sustainable place to operate from. At some point, you need to begin putting your own needs above other people's, despite what we've all been told about selfishness and how it's such a terrible thing. For most of my life, I've always understood my self-worth and trusted my own inner values, but out of fear of being disliked or not fitting in, I think that I've just pushed them to the side and tried to conform to whatever the group was doing at a certain time. Um, and just be a better friend and easier person to be around, somebody who listens more than they speak and doesn't cause much trouble. I've always kind of just tried to be invisible and just be like the third person in the friend group or just in addition to whatever situation it was instead of lead anything, because there certainly is hierarchies in a friend group, and I don't think that I've had the assertion enough or the desire, I guess, to be at the forefront of a friend group necessarily. I feel like it's always been a little bit too draining for me. Um, Whether these tendencies stem from my childhood, growing up with four siblings and feeling like I had to learn emotional regulation very young, or it's just something that's like in my nature and a part of who I am, I'm not sure. But I think that I've at least matured to a state where I'm able to recognize it and understand that though it can be helpful at times to display these characteristics, I don't think that it necessarily serves me to constantly be dwelling on them or trying to operate in this place where I'm not speaking my mind because I'm trying to now build something else in my life. So when you're striving towards something, I think it's a very respectable act to speak your mind, and be somebody that asserts himself firmly in their beliefs and morality, um, instead of just operating from fear, essentially. I think that we can get caught in this cycle of not wanting to stand out too much because other people are more important than us in our mind for some reason. I've always been very good at making friends or just speaking people's language and being friendly around them, which has led me to come off to be a more social person. And I just think that though that's good, I want to be somebody who kind of sets the bar instead of just following. You know what I mean? So I think that it's most likely the reason why I find being around a group of people so draining, or going out to a bar, for example, to be such a chore and a task for me in my life, because I feel like I'm always performing or putting on an act, when in reality, the type of person that I am, what is true to my own nature, is that I recharge in solitude and isolation. It may seem depressing, but it's just the character type that I am. I don't like big, extravagant hangouts and things that just seem like they require so much energy, especially because I'm trying to morph into the likable version of myself in in a social setting, excuse me, instead of just being who it is that I am. I guess I've kind of struggled with an identity for myself, and that could also stem from being somebody who's mixed, half black and half white. I don't know where I've necessarily been able to fit in, if that makes sense, or who my friend group should be. And then I've always just tried to act in a certain way that is acceptable to everybody instead of building who it is that I am and putting that on display in my character and allowing other people to react accordingly. And that's something that I want to step into more. I feel like it took me a long time to understand the difference between selfishness and self-advocacy, whereas the selfish person prioritizes personal gain over others and actively disregards long-term consequences to their actions, and is isn't somebody who really takes responsibility for harm that they may cause. The self-advocate lets their beliefs be known honestly and with integrity while still respecting other people. And there's definitely like a fine line in between the two. but I've always just operated out of the assumption that if I'm being assertive, it's aggression, you know? And I have never really been a fan of conflict or arguments. And like I said, it may be, stems from growing up in a more hectic household, for lack of a better way to put that, and just trying to keep everything down here. I'm a low cortisol person. When we're operating up here, that's not where I want to be. My body immediately reacts to conflict, and I want to get myself out of those situations as quickly as possible, or regulate the emotions of others, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily, but it can lead to people having a certain perspective of you that you're somebody who doesn't stand on top of your morals and hold truths close to you, and you just kind of go with the flow and do whatever everybody else is doing. And that's not the person that I am choosing to be moving forward in my life. Whether people want to see that or not, I think it's important for everybody who can relate to this to step into a more firm stance and not just be passive. It doesn't mean that you need to be an aggressive person, but I think practicing assertion is definitely beneficial for those who are seeking growth. It's something that I definitely have to work on and that I want to moving forward. Eleanor Roosevelt has a great quote that says, "Do what you feel in your heart to be right, for you'll be criticized anyway." So I guess the question to ask myself, and that is important to think about here, is, would you rather be talked about behind your back because you're a more passive person, or have somebody confront you directly because they respect you? Or if they don't respect you, they feel an insecurity about themselves because you carry yourself in such a way that is admirable. And yeah, that's just been on my mind. Let me know what you think.